Live look here at the White House in Washington, D.C. As we mentioned, President Biden is returning to our nation's capital after spending another weekend in Delaware. No public events on schedule today except for a private lunch he's set to have with Vice President Kamala Harris.
There is a White House press briefing with Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre a little later. One House correspondent who will not be there is Simon Ateba from Today's News Africa. He had his credentials pulled after becoming a thorn in the side of the Biden White House. Now he's suing the White House along with a large group of other journalists. Ateba wants the administration to restore his press badge. This comes after the White House revised its credentialing criteria. So Simon Ateba, he joins us now along with Jesse Franklin Murdoch, who's representing Ateba. Thank you both for being here. Let's go through the lawsuit. It states, quote, in the last 5 years since joining the White House press corps, Mr. Ateba has been treated with contempt by the current press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, and her staff, receiving only a handful of responses to questions and almost no opportunity to meaningfully communicate with the White House. So, Simon, I want to go to you first, since you've been dealing with this. How bad is it? What sort of situations have you dealt with where you haven't been able to ask proper questions?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Emma, for having me on Newsmax. I know Fox News will not have me on as long as I keep supporting Tucker Carlson. So thank you for having me. It's been really hard for me to cover the White House. I've faced discrimination by the press secretaries, Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre. In the past 10 months, I've not been called on, including when President Biden received 50 African leaders in Washington, D.C., including when the Vice President Kamala Harris went to Africa, including when the First Lady goes to Africa. I'm not called on at press briefing. I'm not called on during background call. I've attended only one press briefing with President Biden since he came into office almost 3 years ago. And as I said, the public has a right to know, and I, as a journalist, I have a duty to tell. And my job is just to tell people what is happening, and the First Amendment protects me, and the White House is trying to silence me, and trying to silence me for one reason: for doing my job, for asking the right question that the American people really care about, and they are making a mockery of the First Amendment.
Yes, the First Amendment, the freedom of the press, and really reporters in the room are the American public's voices. They can ask the questions of the administration that they wouldn't be able to ask day to day. For our viewers who aren't aware of an example of what it was like for Simon to be in the briefing room, here's a moment with Simon and Karine Jean-Pierre from last March. Take a watch.
Yeah, right. You're right. You're here for me. Refer me. No. No, that's not. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this.
From across the room. You've been discriminating against me and discriminating against some people in the briefing room. And I'm saying that this is the U.S., this is not China, this is not Russia. This is not Russia.
Okay.
What you are doing, you are making a mockery of the First Amendment.
Decorum, please.
It's been 7 months. You've not called on me. You've done my messages. I'm saying that that's not right. That's not right.
On times. Welcome, guys. Welcome. Welcome to the press briefing room.
Okay, so of course we recall when reporters in the room had pressed Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany at the time during the Trump administration. They were yelled at, they were given awards because they were determined to ask those questions. Simon does it. It's something totally different. You hear someone yell out decorum in the background. Jesse, let me go to you. You know, we've heard from the White House that Simon's activities in the press briefing room had been described by critics as disruptive, inappropriate. What's your response for your client?
My response is that that's simply irrelevant. If the White House felt that Simon's behavior was not appropriate, they should have gone through proper channels and acted on those. Instead, what they did was they changed the process altogether in an unconstitutional way. They, in trying to appear neutral, they changed the criteria in a specific attempt to exclude Simon from the briefing room. That's what's called viewpoint discrimination, and that violates the First Amendment. They also granted unbridled discretion to correspondent committees in other branches of government to say who is a journalist in good repute in their profession, and allows those clubs of journalists discretion on who can and cannot be a member of the White House press corps.
So is that favoritism? You're saying the White House is picking favorites when they're asking questions, or taking questions, rather?
It's not so much whether they're playing favorites and taking questions, it's who's even allowed in the room. And by telling other committees and other branches of government that they have the right to say who can and cannot be a member of the press corps that gets the White House hard passes, they're infringing on the press freedom, the First Amendment rights of Simon and of journalists altogether.
Simon, what's your plan in the meantime, now that you don't have these press creds anymore?
No, so it's been really hard. I go for a run every morning. I live around Rock Creek Park, and I listen to audiobooks, and that's what I'm doing now. And I attend press briefings online around the world. But it's been hard. I can't have access to the White House. They are trying to silence me and try to silence the voice of Africa in the U.S., and which is really sad, because in the briefing room, I see them call on people from Pakistan, from India, from everywhere, but they disrespect us in Africa. They disrespect any person who looks like me, who sounds like me. What is happening now is pure discrimination against me, but also against the continent of Africa.
All right. Really interesting perspectives that you're sharing with us. Again, all allegations in the lawsuit. We won't be seeing Simon in the briefing room, but we'll continue to follow his story. Our thanks to Simon Ateba and Jesse Franklin Murdoch.